Every night, the news tells you the same stuff: jobs report, stock market up or down, inflation this, inflation that. But the things that actually determine whether your mortgage rate stays high, whether groceries prices ever come back down, whether your kids can ever afford a house or not, none of that makes the evening news because it's happening in places most people have never heard of, and that is the bond market. Foreign governments are quietly selling off American debt, a war choking off oil shipments through a strait most people can't find on a map, and hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into AI technology that has yet to prove that it can make money at scale. This is the stuff that's actually shaping your financial future, and nobody is breaking it down for regular people. So let's do that right now. The bond market is the real economy. Here's the number that should keep every American up at night. The United States government owes roughly $39 trillion. Not million, not billion, 39 trillion. And this year, just the interest payments on that debt hit over $1 trillion. That's triple what it was in 2020. Listen to that again. That's triple what it was 6 years ago in 2020. We were paying $345 billion a year interest in 2020. $345 billion. Now it's $1 trillion. That's $3 billion a day just to keep up with the minimum interest payments. And here's the part that really hits home. We're now spending more on interest payments than we spend on the entire United States military. Think about that. The most powerful military on the planet, and we're spending more money just servicing old debt than we are defending the country. In the first 3 months of this fiscal year alone, interest payments already passed defense spending for the same period. Now imagine the U.S. debt like a really high credit card balance for your family. You owe a massive amount of debt. The interest rate keeps climbing. Your minimum payment just tripled in the last 6 years, but your income has barely moved. You're not paying the balance down. You're only trying to keep up with the interest. And every month, the balance just gets bigger. That's the United States government right now. That's the financial foundation everything else sits on top of. And it gets worse. The Congressional Budget Office projects that the interest payments will double to over $2 trillion by the year 2036. And by 2048, interest on the debt will be the single largest thing the federal government spends money on. Bigger than defense, bigger than Social Security, bigger than Medicare. The government will literally be spending more money paying for the past than investing in the future. So the problem is that when bond yields go up, meaning it costs more for the government to borrow money, that $1 trillion interest bill gets even bigger. And right now, the 10-year Treasury yield is sitting around 4.5%. The 30-year yield hit its highest level since 2007 only back in May, breaking past 5%. That means borrowing just got significantly more expensive for everyone, not just the government. You, your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card, all of it is connected to these numbers. Now here's where it gets really uncomfortable. A big chunk of that $39 trillion in debt is owned by foreign countries, about a third of it, and some of the biggest holders are starting to sell. Japan is currently the largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. They hold about $1.2 trillion worth, and in just the first 3 months of 2026, Japan investors dumped nearly $30 billion in U.S. bonds. That's the biggest quarterly sell-off in 4 years, and the pace got faster every month. It is accelerated from January to February to March, and they are not slowing down, they're speeding up. Why? Because Japan has its own problems. Their currency, the yen, has been getting crushed. Their government spent almost $55 billion trying to prop it up. And one of the ways they get the cash to do that is by selling U.S. bonds. On top of that, Japanese bond yields are now at their highest level since the 1990s. So their own investors can earn solid returns at home without taking on the risk of parking their money in American debt. The incentive to hold our bonds is disappearing. Then there's the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Here's where the war in the Middle East connects directly to your wallet. The Strait of Hormuz has been blocked since late February. That strait is how the UAE gets its oil to market. It's their primary source of dollar income. With that choked off, Emirati officials went to Washington and basically said, we might need a financial lifeline, and if we don't get one, we may start selling oil in Chinese yen instead of U.S. dollars. That is a direct threat to the petrodollar system that's been the backbone of American economic power for over 50 years. Here's what all of this means in plain English. When foreign countries stop buying our debt, or worse, start selling it, the supply of bonds on the market goes up. When supply goes up, prices drop. When prices drop, yields, that's the interest that the government has to pay on the bonds, yields go up. And when yields go up, borrowing gets more expensive for everyone. The government, businesses, me, and you. That's why your mortgage rate is still high. That's why car loans cost what they cost. Foreign countries are pulling out of U.S. debt is not some abstract financial concept. It is money literally coming out of your pocket. Most people have never heard of the Strait of Hormuz, but it might be the most important waterway in the world for your daily life. A massive percentage of the world's oil supply passes through that narrow channel between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. And since late February of this year, Iran has largely blocked it. After the U.S. and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, Iran retaliated by shutting down that strait. They warned ships not to pass. They attacked merchant vessels. They laid sea mines in the water. Oil prices surged past $113 a barrel, up more than 50% since the conflict started. Now here's why that matters to a guy in Ohio or Texas or Georgia who doesn't care about Middle East politics. Higher oil prices don't just mean more expensive gas at the pump. Oil prices ripple through everything. Trucking costs go up, so the price of every product that gets delivered to a store goes up. Manufacturing costs go up. Heating costs goes up. Food production costs go up. It's a hidden tax on every single thing that you buy. And here's the vicious cycle that nobody explains. Higher energy costs keep inflation elevated. When inflation stays high, the Federal Reserve can't cut interest rates like everyone hoped. That's what they did in 2007 and 8. When interest rates stay high, bond yields stay high. When bond yields stay high, it costs more to service that $39 trillion, soon to be $40 trillion in interest. And when it costs more to service that debt, the government borrows more to cover the gap, which makes the debt bigger, which makes the interest payments bigger, and around it goes. So a war in the Middle East that feels like it has nothing to do with your life is actually one of the biggest reasons that your grocery bill hasn't come back down, your mortgage rate is still brutal, and they're going to probably get worse before they get better. So now let's talk about something that sounds like good news on the surface, but might actually be a ticking time bomb, and that's artificial intelligence. You've probably seen the headlines, AI is the future. Companies are investing hundreds of billions of dollars. The economy is growing because of all this tech spending, and that's partially true. But here's what they're not telling you. The biggest tech companies in the world, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, are planning to spend nearly $700 billion on AI data centers in 2026 alone. Amazon alone is projecting $200 billion. Google is somewhere around $180 billion. These are staggering numbers. But here's the problem. A lot of this spending is being funded by debt. Amazon just raised $37 billion in bonds. Oracle is raising $45 to $50 billion in a combination of debt and stock. Google's parent company Alphabet sold a 100-year bond, a bond that won't mature for over a century, just to fund AI build-out. These companies are borrowing massive amounts of money to build infrastructure for a technology that has not proven it can generate profits at the same scale as the investments. Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, called this a more dangerous phase of the AI boom, and analysts project that by 2030, AI funding needs will exceed $1.4 trillion a year, which is more than current financial markets can even support. That means they'll need to find new ways to borrow even more money. Here's where it connects to the economy that you and I live in. A lot of the GDP, gross domestic product, growth that gets reported, the number that makes the economy look healthy, is being propped up by this AI spending. But it's debt-based spendings. It's companies borrowing billions to build data centers and buy chips. If AI doesn't generate revenue at a scale that matches all this investment, and so far it has not, that debt doesn't disappear. The companies still owe it. The interest still accrues, and the whole thing starts to look a lot like a bubble. Some of the biggest AI startups, including OpenAI and others, are still losing money. They're funding their operations by selling pieces of themselves to investors and borrowing from banks. That's not a business model. That's a fundraising model. And at some point, the bill is going to come due. So what does this mean for you? Let's bring all of this back to your life, because I know a lot of you guys hear bond yields and treasury market and your eyes glaze over. But here is the reality. The reason your mortgage rate is still brutal is not just because of inflation. It's because bond yields are elevated, partly because foreign countries are selling U.S. debt, and partly because the government is borrowing more than ever to cover $1 trillion a year in interest payments. The reason groceries and gas and insurance haven't come back down is partly because a war in the Middle East choked off oil shipments through one of the most important waterways on the planet, and higher energy costs feed into the price of everything. The reason the economy looks okay on paper but feels terrible in your daily life is partly because a huge chunk of reported growth is being driven by tech companies borrowing hundreds of billions to build AI infrastructure that hasn't proven it can make money. None of this is stuff you'll hear explained clearly on the nightly news. They'll show you stock tickers and jobs numbers because those are easy stories. But the bond market, foreign debt holders, energy choke points, and the AI debt bubble, those are actually foundational. And the cracks are starting to show. Men in midlife can't afford to be ignorant about this. Those assumptions are being tested right now in ways that most people just don't see. So here's what you do. You build your own financial clarity. You cut waste ruthlessly. You diversify your income so you're not dependent on one paycheck from one company and one industry. You stop assuming the system is going to take care of you, because the system is $3 billion a day behind on its own bills. That's clarity. And if this is the kind of conversation that you need in your life, please like the video and subscribe, because we're going to keep having it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.